Okay, so this is Realtors in Cars. We're drinking coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a nice coffee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Iced
good.
coffee.
All right, so I'm drinking the regular coffee. So I'm glad you were my eyes and ears. Last time we did this, we had a couple of close calls from erratic drivers. And so we thought this time we'd talk a little bit about, I thought maybe we'd talk about sale and settlement contingencies. How's that sound?
Okay.
Is that something that's worth talking about? And we're going to talk about making these destination trips. So today we're going to take a trip out of our office in Duncansville. We probably should take the destination trip over to the Meadows and just eat ice cream. Yeah. Since that's new.
Is it open?
It's open. Yeah, it's open. The grand opening was the other day. They had a band from the Hollidaysburg High School and everything going on. Awesome. It was good stuff. So today's destination is going to be the Horseshoe Curve. We're going to go. We'll talk a little about the Horseshoe Curve as we talk about real estate, and we're going to talk about sale and settlement of other property with contingencies and all that good happy stuff. So have you had one of these?
Yes.
You've had these. These come up. We're getting a lot of these right now because there's folks that are buying homes that also have a home to sell. So in this situation, you could be a buyer or seller listening to this podcast, and you'd pick up some information regardless of whether you're a buyer or seller, wouldn't you?
Right.
Because you get to have sunglasses on. I probably should have sunglasses on too. All right, so sale and settlement of other property. So there's a couple of versions of this. First off, if you've got a property to sell and you want to buy a new property, I always recommend, I don't know if you agree, but I always recommend you get that house sold first.
Right.
What's the problem with doing that though? What's everybody's heartache?
They don't know where they're going to go.
Right. So they're like, well, I don't want to sell my house and then I don't have some place to go. And that's really the rub, isn't it? With people that you know, they know or they have their heart set on a house that they'd like to purchase, but they have to sell their house to buy it.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that sets a lot of people up for disappointment because these things don't always come together, do they?
Right.
They'll fall apart. So, because what's happening now when you do this is you're going to have a chain of events. You're going to be tied together in a chain with some other people in the process, right? So think about that. You're a buyer. You want to sell your house. You've got to get a buyer. You want to buy somebody else's house. God knows they want to buy a house too.
Right.
And so these things get chained together. And if somebody falls out of the chain, it's like dominoes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What's like dominoes? They're all gonna just.
Their whole thing's gonna.
It's gonna implode, isn't it? Because now your buyer, you're relying on your buyer, and you're a buyer of another house, so they're relying on you, and so they're tied together. The best thing is if you can have somebody in that chain that doesn't have a house to sell.
Right.
Isn't it? Because now you're not in a situation where you're going to have folks that and we're going to go up Sugar. We'll go up Carson Valley. We'll go up a little bit different way. Maybe we'll go up like Sugar Run. We'll go past Blue Knob Auto, which is the Blue Knob Auto is kind of like what is it? We were often called the Blue Knob Auto of real estate. Mm-hmm. So they're the real estate. Yeah, they're the Perry Wellington of cars.
Which is funny because even before I had my real estate license, before I had it, my dad was like compared Perry Wellington to Blue Knob Auto.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, we'll take a second to talk about that since we're going past Blue Knob Auto. These guys went out and they really disrupted the car business, didn't they? Mm-hmm. The car business was always, you went into a car lot and the salesperson came out and met you and you had to ask them how much is the price of this car. They didn't have any prices on the windows. Now, well, look, that car lot's not doing prices.
No, and it's right across the street.
They're right across the street from Blue Knob Auto. You think they would have noticed, like, something's going on across the street? Like, they've got prices on the windows. Maybe we got to do some of that stuff?
Yeah, and the cars are constantly moving.
Yeah. So Blue Knob Auto really disrupted the car business because they started putting prices on the cars. And they had this notion that we don't have to make our monthly living on each car. We're gonna sell a lot of cars, and we're gonna make a little bit on each one, and we're gonna sell a lot, and we'll make it up on volume. Mm-hmm. And that's what we did with Perry Wellington. Mm-hmm. So same kind of concept. So Blue Knob is the Perry Wellington of autos.
Well, did you ever notice how many cars have Blue Knob Auto come from Blue Knob Auto? I mean, So many, and even out of state. Like,
oh yeah,
like
you're
I'm
driving
on vacation and I see Blue Knob Auto.
Yeah, you're like at the Outer Banks and there's Blue Knob Auto stickers on the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, well, it's probably just more people vacationing.
It probably is, because I think a ton of Blair County people go to.
Yeah.
But I mean, out of state, Maryland, Virginia.
I have visited before I was in real estate. I visited with folks in places like Danville and places like that. And it's, oh yeah, we go to Blue Knob to buy our cars. Mm-hmm. Really? You drive to Altoona, 2 hour, hour and a half, 2 hours away to buy a car? Oh yeah, that's expected.
My friend from North Carolina. Now she's from Bellwood, but she lives in North Carolina now. When her car died and needed a new car, she flew up, bought one at Blue Knob Auto, and drove it back.
Wow.
It's like, that's commitment.
That's serious right there. So we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back through El Dorado. El Dorado, right? Mm-hmm. I made fun of Dawn for saying that on TV. Mm-hmm. So we go through El Dorado section of Altoona here, and this is actually known as Cannon Station. I have no idea why it's called Cannon Station, or why it's called El Dorado.
I don't know.
So we probably need to find out. Next time we'll go out to Foot of 10. I can explain that one. That's a different one altogether. But Cannon Station, we'll have to get the I don't know, a lot of these things are related to old railroad names.
I don't know.
So we'll find out.
History's not really my thing.
No?
No.
Well, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, don't they say something like that?
Well then.
Yeah, so.
I'm doomed to repeat it, I guess.
Yep, you're going to get some of that.
History,
oh, how about some of the coffee part? We can have a little coffee.
Mine's decaf, so it's not even like
it's not really
real.
So that's not, we're not going to really call that coffee then. Okay. So back to, we talked about Blue Knob being the Perry Wellington of automobiles. And let's go back to the sale and settlement contingency. So you've got a house to sell. You want to buy a house. So when you make an offer on the house that you're purchasing, you have to your realtor has to put together some documentation that says, look, these people have a house, as a buyer, I have a house to sell and would like you to accept our offer, knowing that we have a house of our own to sell. And so the people that are accepting this offer, they're going to want to do a couple of things. What are some of the things you think that they might be interested in doing?
They're going to want to keep advertising it.
So they're going to want to continue to market the property. Okay, that's a given. All right, continue to market.
They're not going to want to be locked into that contract, not knowing if those people are ever going to sell.
Right. So not only are they going to continue to market it, they're going to continue. They want to have their agent solicit additional offers to make sure that, if a better offer that's not contingent, meaning they don't have a house to sell, for example, comes along, they're going to want to take that, right?
Do you know what the percent or a rough percentage is on people who do offer with sale and settlement contingencies?
Very Wellington. I don't know. That's a good question. What are the we don't track that really, but that'd be an interesting thing to track to see how many of those actually go through, because there's dates that have to be met with that.
Yeah,
right?
and it's just that's such a bonus whenever someone makes an offer and they don't have a house to sell. It's like,
oh yeah,
yay,
yay, yeah. Go team.
Or you have a buyer who doesn't have to sell their house first, which is awesome.
Absolutely. I just remembered something I didn't do yet, and I'm going to have to pause our video for a second because I have to make sure. I just forgot something that I didn't do. It just hit me, and I got to stop for a second and make a phone call. So we're going to interrupt our show for just a second. Okay, we're back on. We had to take care of a little bit of business, a little TCOB, a little taking care of business. We had a showing request we had to authorize. We want to make sure that gets done. It's great to show your houses, but it's important that they know they can. Okay, so we're back on the road, and we were in the midst of talking about the sale and settlement contingency and what it means to have a buyer who has to sell their home. So, and you mentioned, the best buyer is the one doesn't have to sell. Okay, so, and you mentioned that they want to continue to market the house. That was a thing. So you can continue to show the house, and you might take other offers. So really having a contract on a property that has a sale and settlement contingency isn't really like having a contract, is it?
Right now.
So what are the advantages? Let's talk about this. If you're a buyer, what's the advantage of getting the house under contract with a sale and settlement contingency, you think? Can you think of any big advantages?
I would think an advantage. but I would think an advantage is that you tried, you're trying, and you're doing the best you can. You put the offer in, so they know that
you're serious.
You're serious about it.
Okay, good. And I think the big thing is price. You know they'll accept the price that you've offered.
Okay.
So you've locked down your price. I would argue though that you probably have to have a really good, solid offer. You're really negotiating from a position of weakness, I think, a bit. So you're probably not going to get your best, most aggressive price, I would think.
And I would think it would be hard to, if you don't know what your house is going to sell for, it might be hard to make your best offer.
Exactly. Right. So to some degree, it puts you at a bit of a disadvantage because you at least know that they'll accept your offer for the price you're willing to pay. And I think the other advantage is, as a buyer, is it puts you in play knowing it's like, look, they'll accept this offer on the house I want. I got to get my house sold, right? Wouldn't you think that? I mean, so I think it's time to get aggressive and get your house sold, because there's no monkeying around. If you don't get your house sold, you're not going to be able to buy the new house.
And if it's important enough to you, to get that house that you want, it might be worth it to reduce it, to make it more desirable.
Right, because reducing a price of a house generally will enhance its ability to sell. I mean, let's face it. I mean, most people want to get the most for their house, but I always tell people, so look, if you decrease a house and you keep decreasing it, you'll eventually sell it. I mean, I'm not sure that that's really the essence of salesmanship, the essence of what we're trying to do as realtors, but it is, eventually you'll get it to a price where somebody will buy it because you'll get that price down there. It's so aggressive. So from a buyer standpoint, you've got a couple of angles there that I think are helpful. Let's think about it from the seller standpoint. Why would you want to accept one of these?
I don't think it hurts to accept it.
No, I don't think so either.
So, I mean, they're not really out anything by accepting it, because they know they're not necessarily completely locked into it if something else comes along. And they don't have to sell a house. The new buyer doesn't.
I'll call it the BBD. The bigger, better deal comes along. And so the bigger, better deal comes along, and you now have the ability to take this better offer. You might as well get it under contract with this sale and settlement contingent. Can you think of anything else that might be advantageous for the seller to take this offer? How about if the seller's a buyer? Do you think they're in a position now where they might want to make an offer on a house?
Yeah, but it's still kind of still kind of that in limbo.
Still not in the best position for negotiating, I think, because you're going to go into, now you're the buyer and you're offering on these terms. I think from a negotiating standpoint,
Your dominoes are a little rocky.
Yeah, now there's more people in this chain that could knock you out. Look, you can see the windmills from this.
I was at a house yesterday that I'm selling, and man, you have the best view of the windmills. It's kind of cool. I mean, they're far, but it was kind of cool to look over and see. Maybe some people consider that an eyesore.
Yeah, some people aren't fond of the noise. They got to make a rumble.
Oh, this is not close enough. To hear noise.
Okay.
But the buyer was, I don't know, just kind of was like neat in the distance to see them.
If the trees weren't budding right now, you'd think this was a fall ride.
Yeah,
there's a lot of leaves on the road, and with the budding of the trees is going to give that away for you viewers at home. So we're passing the Altoona watershed. I think we just passed Lake Altoona. It's not
I can't see out the window.
It's not a recreational lake, I might add. It's a reservoir for our water. We get good water supply in this area. So we get good water, which is a big plus. I think a lot of people take that for granted. So back to you're a seller. You've got a buyer making an offer. You may be a buyer. You're going to make an offer. So this thing's all chained together. So a couple things to think about with this. I think as a seller, if you've got a sale and settlement contingency and you're accepting that, you can use that to grind or to work on other offers. You say, look, we've got an offer in. We got some people that are in play here. Let's see if other people will offer. So I would, as an agent, if I've got other people looking, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to talk to them about, hey, we've got an offer in. If you don't make your deal, these people could wind up selling their house. The minute they sell their house, they're locked in, right? So the minute they get an offer, that they'll accept on their house. Their deal locks in, they lock in your deal, and now you're not really shopping that for a better offer. Now you can still shop it for backups, which we do at Perry Wellington, right?
Right.
Even though it's under contract, if it's contingent on them closing on their house or contingent on financing, we're going to continue to market that property.
Do you think most people wait until their house is pending before they submit an offer, so then they just have to submit a settlement contingency instead of sale and settlement?
I think that puts you in the best negotiating standpoint. Now we're going to turn into the world famous Horseshoe Curve.
World famous. I've been here like twice.
World famous National Historic Landmark.
You know, my father-in-law was a train engineer for
Really?
ever.
So is my father-in-law.
Retired.
Really?
Yeah, he just retired in February.
We should catch up on that because my father-in-law was a retired. He's a retired train engineer, and my brother-in-law actually is a train engineer.
And when my husband was younger, we used to come up here and see him drive the train around the Horseshoe Curve.
They don't like you calling it the choo-choo, from what I've noticed.
I don't know.
They're not into that.
I guess it's cute if you're a kid.
Yeah.
Might not be cute when you're like older than 10.
No. All right, so we're sitting at the world famous Horseshoe Curve. We pulled in here for a second. So this Horseshoe Curve, just to talk about this for a second, the Pennsylvania Railroad, and I know all this history about this because I went in and watched the movie one time. So
I would have skipped that part.
You skipped that part. So there's a movie. If you go in and watch the movie, you can go in and see them talk about the reason that they built this. They actually shaved the side of a mountain off and actually used the elevation of shaving off the side of a mountain to bring the train up over these mountains. So it actually gains elevation as it goes around this big. You actually see a train. If you sit here, you can see a train all the way from beginning to end, all the way around. You can actually see the beginning and end of it. It's pretty awesome. But rather than build a big trestle bridge to go up over this mountain, this enabled them to, by circling up the mountain and gaining elevation, it enabled them to save from having to build a big bridge to get across that mountain, or burrow a tunnel. Tunnel wouldn't have really helped them because there's a lot more mountains up there. They got basically ride the ridge tops once they get up there, so they really needed to get up on top of the mountain. So burrowing through it wouldn't have solved their problem, right? So this actually, talk about technology changing your life. The Pennsylvania built its own canal system, like the Erie Canal, and had canal boats, and we'll talk about that in another driving session. But
you'll talk about it, I'll listen.
Yeah, and you can listen. But you've heard of Canal Street out in Hollidaysburg, right, Wes? Because that's where the canal was. Well, the interesting thing is, imagine the technology. You build this whole canal system, you dig out all the canals, and you float boats, and then the Pennsylvania Railroad comes in and runs a railroad track right beside you a couple of years later, and then runs trains. That would be a really bad technology disadvantage. Imagine you get mad when you have to buy a new laptop. Imagine if you had to build a whole new, like if your whole canal system you dug by hand was no good.
Probably do that overnight too.
Not so much. Okay, so we're gonna pull out of the Horseshoe Bend here for a second, and we're gonna head back to make our trip not so long today. But we're going to catch up some more on, and you can probably see in the background there a little bit of the Horseshoe Curve. You can actually ride underneath the tunnel. There's a rule in my family, if you're going to drive through the tunnel, we'll drive through the tunnel for a second. If you're going to drive through the tunnel, they have a stoplight on this one. As a kid, we used to just drive through it and try not to hit the car on the other side.
Did you have to beep your horn?
That's what I was going to say. There's a rule, and that's, it must be a many family rule. Everybody must do this.
So, no, here's why I know. Because we called it the culvert in Bellwood when I would go to my friends, Megan's, every day. Right. You had to beep before you went through the culvert. Now there's a light.
See, okay, so we don't beep to tell people are coming through. I just beep because my dad always beeped in the tunnel.
Oh, because it's loud?
Well, it's just a thing. So you get in the tunnel and you're always like, you got to beep in the tunnel just because that's like a thing.
Oh, okay. I did it for safety reasons.
Oh, no, we do it just because we can. Okay. All right, well, so every time I go through a tunnel, my kids, to this day, they're no longer kids, they're adults.
Do you beep the horn?
I still beep the horn going through the tunnel. It's the thing.
Like a long tunnel? Like even in Pittsburgh?
No, not that tunnel.
Okay.
No, these kind of tunnels. Okay, right. Like, you'd look really funny if you beep through the tunnels going through, like, the Chesapeake or something, or underneath Hampton Roads, and people be, like, doing drive-bys and start shooting you up and stuff.
Yeah, you might look funny or kind of annoying.
So that ceases to be funny, and, now kind of bad.
Your daughter might have quit doing that when she moved to...
Look at that, that's a porcupine. You don't see too many porcupines.
You have a lot of roadkill here.
Yeah, I had a tree to porcupine. Okay, so back to the sale and settlement contingency as we drive up past the Horseshoe curve. So the buyer, I think, is in a slight disadvantage because they can get knocked out. So there's a couple of versions of the sale and settlement contingency. One of them is that there's a timed kickout clause. And on that one, you've got a time frame. What are some time frames we typically see?
48 hours.
Yeah.
24 hours?
There's a 24, 48. You can make it whatever you want.
Okay.
But generally we see 48 hours. So in that agreement, we put in a 48-hour window so that if you get a better offer, or an offer you want to accept, it doesn't necessarily have to be a better offer. It could be just an offer where they don't have a house to sell. That would be sufficient. And so it could be actually a lower offer, but they don't have that house to sell. And so the people are like, hey, as a result.
Is that another porcupine?
That's another porcupine.
Gosh, like
Porcupines are not doing well here right now. So that's bad news for the porcupines population. I hope I get out of here.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah, so might not be the best.
I don't have my car pushing shoes on.
No? No, you're not gonna be one. Like you're gonna have to push.
I'm gonna have to.
You have to drive a stick. Yeah, don't know how to operate that part. Okay. You know, that's a funny thing about thieves, car thieves or carjackers. You know, there's more than one instance where they've carjacked people that had a manual transmission and they couldn't drive it.
I did know how when my dad did teach me, but I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, you need to get that's an important skill. You need to get back on that. So.
Well, it's not been important for 16 years.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, they will come.
Able to avoid it.
My wife had to learn because I bought her a car as a present one time early in our marriage. It surprisingly lasted, given that I do things like this. But I bought her a car that was a Mazda and it has stick. It's like, you got to learn. She didn't know how to drive a stick. It's like, well, guess what? You're learning now because that's your car. And you learn how to drive a stick pretty quick if that's the only car you have.
I guess.
So, 48-hour kickout. Let's go back to the 48-hour kickout. 48-hour kickout, timed kickout clause. You, as the seller, you have somebody made another offer. You go back to the buyer and say, okay, buyer, you got 48 hours to remove that contingency that you have to sell your house, or else we're going to sell this house to somebody else. So it does give that buyer an opportunity to cure that contingency. There are other versions of that agreement that do not allow for that time frame, right? They just knock you right out. So that's kind of nice. You can, if you can cure it. Now, one way you could cure it, and not a lot of people can pull this off, but if you can actually carry two mortgages,
yeah,
you could bridge them, get a bridge loan and carry a mortgage on the new house and keep your mortgage on the old house. Generally, people don't people will put these agreements together because they already have a mortgage and they don't want two mortgages. So if you could bridge the mortgages, it would enable you to go ahead and clear the contingency and go ahead and buy the new house. You're gonna have to carry those two mortgages. So a lot of people put these sale and settlement contingencies together just because of that. And the time kickout clause is nice because it does give them an opportunity to cure that, right? So let's talk about what happens. So you get this offer, the offer's made, you give them 48 hours. They can't cure it, you give them notice, you're terminating, right? Now you have a deal with the new buyer, and provided it, I mean, it shouldn't probably have a sale and settlement contingency. I'm going to guess you're not going to do that. We're going back to the tunnel again, so you got to beep the horn. That's required. So I would suspect that normally you would knock out somebody else's sale and settlement contingency with yet another sale and settlement contingency, but I guess you could.
I guess if it was more money.
More money, you prefer it. But again, that would set that person up for being canceled if that's the case, having their agreement terminated. So, in any case, that talks a little bit about the sale and settlement contingency. The regular settlement contingency I don't really think hurts you, because that just says you've got a house under contract,
yep,
and it's got to close. So if you have a house to sell, let's get your house on the market, let's get it sold. Then when you make your offer, you'll put a contingency in there that you just have to settle, which means you just have to go to closing. You've already got a contract. Part of that is you'll attach your agreement for your house that you've got under contract, you attach that agreement to the offer so that they'll see how strong that is. And your agent will generally go back and look at that house on the MLS when they're advising the seller, in this situation. They're going to advise the seller, say, look, this looks like a pretty strong deal because I looked at the house, they've got it under contract, the contract looks pretty solid, the buyer's pre-approved, looks like a good house, should pass inspections, because there's all these other contingencies that could happen that will keep you from closing on that other house, right?
Right. Yeah, it's still scary. I mean, there's still a lot to go through.
Right. So the ideal situation would be if you were a cash buyer, right?
That would be ideal.
That would be pretty awesome. Because as a cash buyer, you'd be able to just walk in and, make your offer, make your best deal. You're not worrying about whether you can get a loan. You can make your deal. There's some nice houses up on that ridge.
I can see there's some nice houses up there. Where's that at?
That is a couple of the clock guy built the one house. It's like $1.5 million. It's up there. It's like up on private land. There's about 5 or 6 houses back in there that are pretty nice houses. They've got pretty nice views, as you can tell too. You can't see that at home. You just have to trust us on that. You can see it's a beautiful panoramic vista as you drive through here.
What's this?
Lake Altoona?
No, the little stream of water that runs beside it. That's like really.
Oh, that's like runoff from the thing. I don't know how that fits into this whole thing. It's orange. It's got like a rust color in it. I forget what that's. It's like a spillway or something for the stream up, because that actually starts out as the stream up above Horseshoe Curve. So I don't know if that's just a spillway or something for these to overflow or something like that. It looks like it can handle a lot of water flow based on that. So okay. So did we cover all the sale and settlement contingency stuff? Did we nail all that stuff? Sale and settlement. Oh, you could also do one of these where there's no kick out. So it's a sale and settlement contingency with no right to continue marketing, which means that you could make an offer that the seller can't take another offer. They can still solicit other offers and backups, but they're not allowed to knock you out in favor of another offer. Now, that would be a great strategy to use as a buyer's agent to submit one of those, right? But working for the lister, for the seller as a listing agent, I would recommend against that, right? I'd say, wait a second, you really want to continue to market this property. You don't want to lock yourself in and just wait them out to see if they can ever sell this property. I don't think that's a good strategy. No. So there's a couple of things there to think about. If you're like we do at Wellington, we've got this advocacy, so we're going to advocate for the seller, or we're going to advocate for the buyer. And even if we have both sides of the transaction, we have, the broker is a dual agent. We'll have designated agents that will manage that. So an agent will manage it for the buyer, agent will manage it for the seller, and everybody will get their best deal, right? So I think that's an important piece. So there is a way to lock it in, although I can tell you those aren't as likely to get accepted as the others. Some other thoughts on sale and settlement contingency with the right to continue marketing with a timed kickout clause. That's a mouthful. So part of being an agent is having all of these tools available at your disposal and picking the right arrow out of your quiver and firing it, right? Picking the right, using the right tools to accomplish the goals. And even if you're a new agent, at Wellington, we train agents, so we got some new agents. And, the trick is the agents aren't acting independently. They're acting under supervision of their broker, moi, or another one of our associate brokers out in one of the other offices. So, agents that are out working with clients that may not have, years and years and years of experience, but have all the latest know-how on all the technology and have all the know-how on the market, how to use computers and find stuff for people, may not as be versed in these techniques. But the good news is
they can easily ask someone who is.
We've got experienced agents and brokers and associate brokers who can give them a hand and make sure that they get you your best deal. So if you're a buyer or a seller, you can use one of our eager, aggressive agents who, are out there, making things happen. and they can bring all of this extra knowledge and expertise to the table through their brokerage, which I think is a big plus. So that was our little trip up to the Horseshoe Curve. We're on our way back. We're in El Dorado now. We're over near, we're actually in Logan Township. You know, you can tell that by the signs are white. Okay, just in case, you know, I'm sure you knew that. But we're on the El Dorado section of Altoona, 58th Street. And we're heading back to our office. What we should be doing is heading back and getting ice cream.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal situation, to get that ice cream at the Meadows, because they have reopened, if you haven't caught that. So we're going to wrap up our session today here, unless you have anything